that really I never understood, and it still happens. Not only radio, television, in any form of entertainment. At one point, I had some heat as a jock, and so I would get hired at this new job, and I would go, and yet they hired me because of what I was doing, but then I would get there and they didn't want me to do it anymore. And so that was when the idea of having a contract and having lawyers, so it would be completely spelled out. This is what I do. If you don't want that, then don't sign it and don't hire me.
Did you work with, did they, I don't think you touched on this in the book, ever have a consultant try and rework what you were doing?
Yeah, later, for Mark and Brian, when we hit the air in 87, well, it started in Birmingham in 85. We were number one very, very quickly. And when you're number one, you don't take meetings. You don't talk to anybody who can tell you how to do it. What are you going to tell me? I'm number one. There's nowhere to go but down. It's when we went down, that when we were no longer number one, that you take those meetings with people that supposedly are going to help fix the problem. And it goes back to what I said to you guys at the top of this. There wasn't a problem. We were still doing the very same thing that we had done from day one. It was simply that people had heard it and they were ready for something different, something else, something new.
But so were you looking to, I don't know if evolve is the right word, but just kind of, okay, we've talked about these topics. What else is you mentioned like you had a 40-year-old man with a family as your ideal listener. That's kind of, radio programming 101, like who is listening? So did you kind of ask that question as you moved along? Like who is this guy and what is he into now? We're older. This 40-year-old man is still 40. What, I don't know, is that something?
I get your question. I as an individual, and therefore my participation in the radio show changed as I changed, because I was always very big on sharing stories from my life, especially, and you brought my imaginary guy up, and I'll explain that. The audience that classic rock goes after is the demographic is men 25 to 54. So I went right in the middle. My guy's 40. He's probably married and he's got a couple of kids. More than likely, he works a blue collar job. He's a roofer. He lays bricks. He drives trucks, whatever it may be. But the one thing that he and I have in common is that we're both idiots and we're afraid of our wife. And so whenever I did something stupid involving my kids that I tried to keep my wife from learning about, that would be a story that I would tell. The story had to be about 2 minutes. It had to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when I told that story, I told it to that guy. And I can't tell you how well that worked, because to this day, when I meet somebody, they will recite some dumb thing that I did and just crack up. And they act as though we're best friends, which I love that. I'm glad that they feel that way. I, of course, have never met them. And in some cases, don't even remember that particular story. But I think the evolution of myself, as I said, as I grew as a father and a husband and a person, I made sure that the show reflected that growth in me. Whether that be positive or negative, whatever the case may be. But the show itself, the kind of comedy that we enjoy doing, the kind of thing that we brought early when we first got to LA, I don't think that changed. In other words, maybe a consultant might have said, you need to get back to quicker jokes, do the punchline and the setup and the punchline, do that stuff. And it just wasn't who I was, and it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. So we did a variation of the same base of program, but as a person, I do think I grew and shared those things, because The thing about radio, the thing about any form of entertainment, Johnny Carson once talked about this. Real life continues to happen. And, it was very important that Brian and I be on the air every morning at 6 a.m. and do it until 10. But in real life, I buried my sister, my mother, and my father in an 18-month period. And they were all the way back in the South. So I would fly and deal with a funeral of the people who raised me, and then fly back to LA, go on the air, and try to act as though everything was fine. But I didn't do that. I talked about how difficult it was to do what I just did. And I was emotional at times. And that was what I meant by sharing my life with these people. I found it to be very important because I didn't have a choice. I am not in the mood to come in here and tell jokes. So I'm going to tell you what I've really been doing. And I've gotten a great reaction because as I was going through these things, so have they, or they will, or they did. And they related to that. And I think liked the fact that I would be that transparent with them.